to start. I'm Laura Axelson. I've been a reporter for 36 years now and still loving it, still want to do it, don't ever want to stop. Even in light of some challenges that come my way all the time. Excuse me. The first challenge I wanted to talk about is, let me make the font bigger. First challenge I really want to talk about is getting to the job. So the job, wherever it happens to be, if you're going to a court, if you're going to a deposition, getting to the job and getting to the job on time. And when I say on time, for me, that means an hour early. When I first started reporting all those years ago, I had a machine, I had a couple pads of paper, I had some exhibit stickers, and that was it. So it took me, 2 minutes to set up. Pretty much nothing to troubleshoot. So I would just get there maybe 15 minutes beforehand or sometimes half an hour. But nowadays we have all this computerized stuff, things to troubleshoot. And so I get there an hour early all the time. So what has happened to me sometimes is I will get a flat tire. There's an unexpected really bad traffic. So I would advise you all to learn how to change a tire. Now, my mother made sure we knew how to change a tire and how to nail in a nail straight. Two things that are very, very handy. So I'm remembering one time my job was probably an hour and a half away, but I left on time to be there an hour ahead of time, had a flat tire. I called AAA, but as I was waiting for them to come, I changed the tire myself and got to the job like about 15 minutes early still, and nobody even had to know that I had trouble, except my hands were all dirty from changing that tire. If I had waited for AAA, or if I had left even in time to get there half an hour or 15 minutes ahead of time, it would have been so much stress. I wouldn't have gotten there on time. They would have either replaced me, or I would have, made them all wait, and they'd be kind of upset. Even though they understand these things happen, they still get upset because their whole plan for the day, for the deposition or whatever, was messed up. So I always make sure I know how to change the tire of whatever car I'm driving, and I leave early enough to prepare or to allow for this kind of thing. So another challenge you'll get is when you actually get to the job and you go in and you're all set up, and then the attorney walks in and says, "Oh, no, I don't want you on this side, I want you on that side." So changing your setup. So it's really, really easy to be annoyed and frustrated by this. But I say just do it. It's really not that big a deal. It probably takes me 5 to 7 minutes to move my setup to another part of the room. And I used to let it really annoy me, and it would kind of set the tone for how I was writing that day, etc. Now I just say, okay, fine. And in my mind, I'm feeling sorry for that attorney that he or she cannot, is so stuck inside a box that he or she cannot function when you change one little component. So I don't want to be like that. So if I get thrown for a loop like that, I just say, okay, no problem, and do it. And then I'm not frustrated. I'm happy. I write well. So that's my first thing about that kind of thing is just go with the flow. Don't worry about it. Don't be a diva. I hate diva reporters. Don't be a diva. Just, work with, or sometimes you'll get there and the videographer gets there after you and also wants you to change. And I just say do it. I don't really care. It's just, I'm there to write. That's the fun part for me. It doesn't matter where I'm sitting, really. I can sit anywhere, and either side they can be. The other day, we have what's called the West Coast and the East Coast video setup. So I'm used to the West Coast because I'm on the West Coast, but these attorneys are from the East and had the East Coast. And for me, it's really kind of an odd setup and etc. But whatever, I don't care. I'll just do it. So that's my very important tip for you, is just do it and don't worry about it. Get used to practice. If that kind of thing bothers you, if you like to have everything in order, then practice at home or or at school. Do something. If you're always sitting in the same place at school, sit somewhere else. At home, if you always practice in one place, practice somewhere else. Go to a coffee place and practice one time. Just so you're out of your element and it doesn't become scary and frustrating for you. Okay, so here's a really, really good one. Over talkers. Okay, that's like a horrible thing that happens with over. Oh, before there's a question. Okay, so seeing people's faces. Now, that's a really interesting one. I was taught in school, always look at people's mouths, always watch them talk. So imagine my freaking out the first time, like about a year into my reporting, when the lights went out. So of course we could still keep going. It wasn't even any computers or anything then. We could keep going, but I couldn't see their mouths anymore very well. It was just like I could see them. Or think about this: you have a person with a very heavy beard and mustache. No way can you see their mouths. You can't. You can't use that tool. And another thing I found when I started captioning is I'm only captioning with headphones on. I can't see who's talking. And even if I can see the TV show I'm captioning, there's a delay. So I'm about 30 seconds behind them. And so whatever they're saying at the moment I can see is something I already wrote, and so it doesn't help. So I say practice not looking at the speakers. And I don't know if this is like in school, the school people who are listening, if that's not a good thing. But I think if you think about it, students will be very much benefited by it. Don't always look at the speaker. Look at your screen sometimes. When you're captioning, you have to look at your screen. It's required because you have to see if you can catch a mistake before it gets sent out. And when I'm doing real time, I like to look at my screen because I can correct an error really quickly before the attorney even looks at his or her screen. So I very rarely look at people's faces anymore, ever. Depos or obviously captioning, I can't. So I would say practice that. Practice that. Definitely practice it. So over talkers is my next thing that's a challenge, in a deposition. Or anywhere actually, but I'm just going to say deposition here because that's what I do mostly. So over talkers. Now, when I was first reporting, I was afraid to speak up. I was 21 or maybe 22. I'd gone straight from high school to court reporting school. I was really shy anyway to begin with back then. And so I was afraid to speak up, and that caused me so much trouble. Because I would get home and my notes would be, this is the days when I was dictating my notes, no computers, no audio. And so I very quickly learned to stop them. And so you really need to practice this at home. Practice this, when you're practicing, practice speaking up. You can do it in front of a mirror. You can have your family read to you or do a fake deposition or whatever court and stop them. So I've done some things like my dad was a reporter, so he had taught me, he would do things like, hey, who wants to be on the record? So I would do that. I usually start out saying, oh, whoa, or oh, whoa, wait, one at a time, or just something like that, not to be just really mean about it, but I do stop them. I recently saw Ana Costa do a talk about always saying, for the record, one at a time, for the record, please speak one at a time, because that brings to mind that this is something they want. They want a clear record. And what happens, I can get a lot of over talking because I practice and I can write really fast now. I practice every day and I can write fast enough to get over talkers up to a certain extent. But even though I can get a lot of it, their transcript comes out so choppy, like question, dashes, dashes, answer, dashes, question, dashes, dashes, question, dashes. It's like this, and it makes no sense. And good attorneys will know that, and they will stop talking when the witness starts to overtalk them. Usually, if they're doing a lot of over-talking, I will give them until a break, and then at a break, I'll mention it again, and then the next break, I'll mention it again if they keep doing it. And then I start stopping them, as they're doing it. So there's like a balance. You don't want to be too annoying by breaking all the time, but you want to get a clean record and not, take 12 days to produce a transcript, trying to figure out what they said. And that brings me to audio. Never rely on audio. So audio is a good thing. It'll be there for you. It's helpful. It's it's good. You can sometimes I'll check a word because they'll say a high school they went to 27 years ago or something. But I never write knowing that the audio is there. I write as if the audio was not there, because if you rely on the audio, you might think that's okay, you can pick it up. Number one, here in California, if somebody questions your transcript and the DRA and the court reporter board looks at it and sees you don't have any notes for that, you're going to get penalized for that. Number two, the audio oftentimes can get corrupted. So here you think, okay, I'll just get that piece from the audio, and there is no audio. Even you can have a backup. I record backup on my phone now, and sometimes I forget to press the button. It's not there, so never, never, never rely on your audio. Okay, so overtalkers. Now, let's have a little aside or a little talk about exhibits, because that can be challenging. So attorneys will say something like, and I want to mark for Exhibit 4 this 2-page document, it's spaced down to blah, blah, blah. And they'll kind of reach out like this. So you're writing what they're saying, and they're still talking, and they're reaching out, and they're expecting you to take it, I don't know how, with your mouth or something, and to take it, and then they're talking, they look at you, and they say, please, Madam Reporter, please mark it. And so I finally have to say, be happy to counsel, when you have to stop talking, that's like a stop writing. Sometimes they'll drop it on the table and keep talking. I used to just let that go and try to catch up, and now if they start talking when I'm writing on, marking the exhibit, I will say, oh, sorry, I wish I had that extra arm so I could write, and I wish I could do all this all at once. And usually they laugh. It only takes 3 seconds or something, but apparently they can't wait that 3 seconds sometimes. So exhibits, talking while you're marking, you need to actually speak up in a nice way, and then you need to keep track of the exhibits. If every break, you need to make sure somebody's not walking out of the room with them, because sometimes they want to take them with them to talk to their attorney. So you got to keep track of it, and especially at the end, make sure you have them all at the end. I've had to do things like chase people down in parking lots to get it back. Sometimes they walk away with it, I don't know. And then I don't realize it till the end, and I have to call everybody up and say, can I use a copy of it for, get an agreement from all counsel. It's kind of a pain. So make sure you keep them all with you, unless they are agreeing that one of the attorneys is going to keep one of them. Maybe it's really big. Maybe it's like a bottle of something. I've had to mark bottles of like food or, energy drinks or something that was an exhibit. So they might want to keep that, and then you just put a note in your transcript that says retained by Ms. Johnson and not attached here to is what I put. So I'm going to mention that exhibit's at the end of the depot again for you guys, but that is just a challenge. When you start marking them, keep track of what number you're on. Sometimes the attorneys will just grab the stickers and they mark them. So then you still have to write down what number you're on, because they're always going to look at you and say, oh, what number are we on? Because there's 20 exhibits strewn and nobody knows what the last one was. So you still have to make a little note in your book or your paper, whatever you're keeping track of things, about what number you're on. Okay, so another thing that can happen, either when you're getting set up or during the depot, is technical difficulties. So the good news is we live in this really fun age of computerized stuff, and we get all these cool, we can Google things now. The bad news is we live in this really cool era of computerized things, and then more things to go wrong. So I am a big take backups. So I might carry it a bit too far according to some people, but I actually take 2 machines with me, 2 laptops, usually double cables, double chargers. I had my machine charger break the other day. Some part of it broke off. I couldn't make it work. So luckily, it was fully charged. My machine was fully charged. And so I didn't have to I could have used my backup machine, because I didn't have a backup charger with me. So I should have had a backup charger with me, and then I would have alleviated some of my stress. But at least I had the other machine. So if this machine ran out of battery, I could have used the other one. So taking backups is really good stress reliever, because you know that if something happens, you have a backup for it. Sometimes I've had crazy computer freezes during the depot. So I've done things like rebooted it, started a job up, all while I'm on the record, because I know that my machine is getting it, because I can see. So I keep writing, but in between times I'll reach over and restart the job, and restart. So that's a good thing to practice too. You can stop them. Nowadays you can stop them and nobody gets mad. I have had to do that sometimes. Say something like, oh, I'm sorry, I have a computer glitch here. Just take me a second to get it going again. And the most important thing to do while you're fixing this technical difficulty is breathe. So if you're not, if you're holding your breath, clenching up, the same amount of oxygen you need in your brain to actually fix this problem is not getting there. So don't rush. Don't feel like you have to hurry. Even setting up, I remember this one doctor deposition where he had to get to the vet with his cat, and so I was setting up. I tell you, it takes me probably between 5 and 10 minutes to set up, depending on if I'm doing real time or not. And so that's not really a very long time. But this witness was, are you done? Are you ready? Okay, let's get started. And when people are talking like that, it's very easy to get sucked into that and be nervous and anxious. But I have my, what I call my puke shield up all times, so that stuff doesn't bother me, because I know that if I get all anxious and freaked out and nervous, that I will definitely miss connecting a cable, or and then I stop breathing and I can't figure out what's not working. So I just have this shield up. I tune them out. I take my time, because it's really only, like I said, 5 to 10 minutes. Taking my time setting up, make sure everything's right before I say I'm ready. I make sure I have my dictionaries in place. They can all be sitting there looking at me with hatred, with annoyance. I still take my time, because I care about the record. I care that it's good. I care that I don't have to come home and try to piece things together. So any questions about what I've said so far? Any of the things before we move on? This applies to taking a test too. If you're in school and you know, something isn't quite 100% like you usually have it, again, you have to sit somewhere different. First of all, hopefully now after this, you'll practice that so that it's not uncomfortable for you. And second of all, you just keep breathing. That's like the number one key to test anxiety is don't forget to breathe. And so that you have a better hope of fixing everything. So thank you, Carrie, great information. She says, do I find if they want to start early when you're there early? Yes, they do. They often do. Or you're in there setting up, even if it's not really super early, but you're in there setting up and they want you to start marking exhibits and doing things. So if that's the case, I don't really mind. If I'm there an hour early, I'm set up and ready for about 45 minutes before the starting time anyway. So yeah, I don't really mind that. If I'm troubleshooting, so say for example, some real-time connection isn't working or whatever for the attorneys, and they want to start early, I tell them I can't. Sometimes I have to call tech support of different things I'm doing. So sometimes I'm streaming to somebody over the internet who's in another country or another state. That's not working. So I have to fix all of these things. So sometimes you can't start early, and you have to feel comfortable saying, you know, that you can't. And either they're going to sit there and look at you, which you put up that shield again and just block them out, or they go, okay, and they get up and they start doing something else and they're not sitting there staring at you while you fix it. So yes, that's a really, really good question. It does happen. And if they start throwing exhibits at me and want me to start marking when I'm not done setting up, I just say, sure, I'll be happy to in a minute when I'm all set up. Because if I have done it where I start marking exhibits before I'm done setting up, and then I just, you know, I feel like maybe I didn't do everything I usually do to get set up. So, okay, so technical difficulties, be prepared with backups. Don't forget to breathe. Don't feel bad about speaking up if you have to. Nowadays, they all know about computer difficulties. It used to be, they used to get really annoyed back in the 90s when when computers were not so prevalent and not everybody was using them. Nowadays, everybody knows about these glitches. They all have them too, and so they don't get mad. Okay, so let's say we come to the end of the depo. So you need to make sure that you get their orders. Now, I like to do it on the record. So even if there's a videographer, the videographer say, we're now off the record and blah, blah, blah. I'll say something like, before we go completely off the record, can I get your orders? Counsel, would you like a copy? Is there any extra orders, rough drafts? I get all of that on the record, and I write what I say. Sometimes I can't write it all because it's so hard to write what you're saying. I don't know if you guys can do it. I've never been able to. So I start writing what I say, and that is something that I fill in later. But I actually write most of it as much as I can. Then I get their orders, and then that's it. I say thank you. Some people take a order form sheet and they sign it. That's good. But what I found is a lot of attorneys get up and run out because they have a plane to catch, or they're just leaving, and so you end up without an order. So even though they might have said, oh yeah, I'll have a copy too, and they run out the room, if you didn't get that on the record or on this sheet, then maybe they'll decide they don't want it really later when you contact them. So get orders is very, very important. Also, what did I say before? Who remembers what I said before about at the end? Something really, really important. Somebody type it for me. Da, da, da. Somebody, anybody? All right, make sure you have the exhibits. Very, very important. Make sure you have the exhibits. It'll cause you such trouble if you don't have them. Thank you. So say thank you. Yeah, I do say thank you when I leave. I'm the last one there always. Sometimes even the videographers leave before I do. But make sure you have the exhibits and back your job up. So If you have a cloud backup, make sure you back it up before you leave, before you start packing up anything, you back that job up somewhere. Before the internet was always accessible, I would take a thumb drive and back it up on there, and then I would stick it somewhere on my body so that if somebody rear-ended me on the way home or whatever and my equipment got messed up, I had that last job on me. But nowadays, mostly everybody offers you Wi-Fi so you can back it up in your cloud. But whatever you do, back it up. And that's true also for you students. Back up your files you want to keep. If you're doing, I don't know, something that you want to keep, do later, go over later, a test, I would say before you turn your test in, back it up somewhere so that you can, if they allow you to, so that in case, however you're giving it to your teachers doesn't work, you have a backup. Like let's say you go to print it and that particular file is corrupt, well, you have the backup version. I'm a big backup proponent because of many times I've lost things that just aren't there anymore. Okay, so get orders, make sure you have your exhibits, back your job up before you even think about packing up. So those are kind of the main problems I've encountered on depositions. The biggest thing I learned over the years is not to get anxious, not to get upset, not to freak out, at least outwardly. I just kind of just don't let them see anything, and I fix everything. And if I can't, then I have to stop it. Another thing I didn't talk about up here, but is reading back. Okay, I get a lot of questions about reading back. So sorry, that's not in the right place, but read back. Now, that can be pretty scary. Sometimes I'll be writing, and you get in the zone, and I'm looking out the window, and I'm writing, and then I hear them say, could I have that read back? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm hoping it's all there. I was not paying attention. I was thinking about my weekend plans, but it's always there. So when it's that easy and I'm just able to zone out, it's always there. I read it back. Now, sometimes I don't read things back correctly because I'm just reading it and I'm not really thinking about it, and an attorney will correct me. Well, that's fine. I'll either just say something like, oh, isn't that what I said? That's what I have here. Or I'll just say, I'll just thank him and keep going, because I know that this is just a rough draft. What I'm reading back is a rough draft, and when I get home, I'll have, I won't have all these people staring at me, and I'll be able to make it beautiful. And some of the things, like, I've been corrected. It's true. Had I really thought about it, I would have known it, like I hit this instead of the, or whatever. I would have known that it should have been the. So I say practice reading back and practice getting criticized or corrected by somebody and not letting it bother you, because and sometimes I've been doing real time before, really technical job where I can't hear. I remember one attorney said, do you have audio? Because I guess the real time wasn't coming through really well, because this was horrible, one of those horrible jobs where it was patent infringement and I couldn't hear or understand what the witness was saying, and so I was making all these corrections when it did sink in. And so instead of getting upset or saying, oh yeah, instead of having that, I stood tall, held my head up and said, oh, this is just a rough, you'll be happy with the final when you get it. Don't worry, counsel. I'm having trouble hearing him, but you will. And they were talking over each other, so I just told him, you will be happy with the final. End of story. Do I get a lot of rough draft orders? Yes, I love rough draft orders. Extra money. So another thing, I'm always writing as if I'm going to get a expedite or a rough draft order, because I love them. That's extra money for very little extra work. So practice to write the best you can. A lot of phrasing is very important. I'm not sure you school people who are on here now how you teach, but I've noticed that they teach you to write everything out always. So writing everything out is important, but phrasing and briefs are what are going to get you speed and out of school, in 2 years instead of 5. So It's good to write things out, but I have a lot of students who come to me, yay for the brief queen, good. I have a lot of students who come to me writing did, D-I-D, and you, Y-O-U. And they said, oh yeah, they say it's important for us to write everything out. Well, how about just writing did, initial D, and you with the U? That way you can write did you together. You can still write it separately if you need to, but you can also write did you. And then if you can write did you can write did you know, did you do, did you have, did you want, did you go to, did you go to the, all in one stroke. And they say those things as if they were one syllable. So he, that's another one. He, just write the he with the E is what I learned. So then I can go had he, did he, is he, and so on. Is he, I don't know, I can't think right now because I'd have to be writing it. But so just even more important than briefs, even more important are small word phrases because they say them so fast. So what you do is if you write those small word phrases in one stroke, then you have time to write out a longer word that you don't have a brief for. So small word phrases like the did you that I mentioned, a lot of, a lot. I can't think of them all right now, but on my Facebook page, students, it says students, I forgot what it's called, student users, Eclipse and more, something like that. I've uploaded a ton of phrases from my dictionary that you can find there if you like. And so yeah, so that's kind of off topic here, but I really do promote doing small word phrases. Even if you don't want to brief anything else, don't write did you in 2 strokes. I'm seeing that so much these days. I don't know what happened to theories. I went to school in 1980 and we already had so many briefs and phrases and everything. I feel like it kind of went downhill after that. So, all right, well, any other questions? Love real time, love rough drafts, love expedites. Because since I'm striving to write so well so that I can come home and not have to work hours and hours, I love them, get extra money. I just build out, so I had a job the other day that was 2 real-time hookups, 2 rough drafts, and expedited, and I billed for that one day, and it wasn't even a full day. I billed for that one day over $3,000. So do I ask for lists if I'm familiar? I definitely don't interrupt for spellings or technical terms unless I couldn't get it phonetically. So recently I had a heavily accented scientist doctor saying a lot of terms I had never heard. Luckily for me, it was real time and they hadn't sent me any prep material, but luckily for me, the attorneys wrote out all these drugs, pharmaceutical drugs they were going to be talking about. So that helped. I don't interrupt. I make a little mark and then go back at a break and say, could you spell your daughter's name for me? Could you, did you say this or this? So on. I never interrupt in the middle of a deposition. I just mark it and go through it either at the end or on a break. Good question though. Some reporters interrupt, and I try very hard not to interrupt their flow of what they're thinking, what they're asking. Sometimes I have to, but it's not. I don't even do that every day. It's maybe once every few months I have to interrupt to get a term or whatever. I interrupt more when they're talking over each other, of course. I will do that. Especially after lunch. In the morning, I'm fresh and I can keep up, and they're over talking, and as long as they stop, you can catch up. After lunch, I'm getting, I tell them I'm too tired. I can't do over talking anymore. So then I start interrupting. So if they do not heed my warning and they keep over talking, I will start interrupting them every single time. And then usually that makes them stop, especially if it's a videotape, because they use those videos for court, to play back in court. So they don't want to have this piece where the reporter's interrupting them. So good questions though.